In all my life consuming political content, I don't know if there's a single moment that makes me quite as frustrated as this next clip. In this clip, conservative political pundit Ben Shapiro is criticizing the part of the American populace that has to work multiple jobs to survive.
If you had to work more than one job to have a roof over your head or food on the table, you probably shouldn't have taken the job that's not paying you enough. That'd be a you problem.
This clip is just so outwardly, so on its face callous. Just for such a religious person, he manages to show like zero sympathy for people in struggling circumstances. And it just boggles my mind that people like him are given a platform to basically spew this same line of argument across all different types of mediums. So, I'm writing a book about why that makes me mad. Hey folks, and welcome back. I've mentioned this sparingly in a few places, but I figured I'd make a formal video to announce it. I'm writing a book right now. It's a collection of thoughts and observations and critiques about the sort of personal responsibility framework that I see guiding a lot of conservative and liberal politics. And these thoughts have been bubbling for a few years at this point, and just kind of where the country's at post-COVID, it feels like the right time to sort of unpack everything here. Basically, there's a lot of aspects of American politics and American life that, on the surface sound kind of distant from each other, but the way that we approach and talk about them can all be kind of linked back to this original sin, if you will, of atomizing American citizens, making everything kind of about the individual in service of distracting from or refuting more substantial conversations about how to fix things. Because, if we're squabbling amongst ourselves, or even, more mentally damaging, blaming ourselves for our own plight, it's hard to hold people in power accountable. And it's pretty clear over the literal centuries that this kind of framework has been developed, that this is a very intentional line of argument. It is not a mistake how relevant this politic is in our politics. The topics of the book will range from sillier things like the sort of anti-capitalism I see in gaming culture that is held back from a very atomized individualist framework of analysis, all the way up to people justifying deaths from the Rona by saying that people made bad choices and that's why they deserve to die. As it stands right now, every week or so, I'm releasing a new chapter or an updated version of the book over on my Patreon. So if you would like to follow the progress of things and, keep up with chapters of the book that may eventually get cut, it's possible that I end up axing the chapter on gaming. Be sure to follow me over on Patreon, which the link to is down below in the description box, if you'd like to keep up on the progress of the book. To give you a quick little taste of what the book's direction is going at this moment, I'm going to deliver a quick excerpt from what I've written so far. And to just very quickly catch you up on where we're at this point in the book, in essence, the arguments I've made so far are that rich people use individual critiques, as in they blame individual choices or individual actors within a system for the violence and poverty that systems create. For example, they'll say the only reason you're poor is because you can't stop eating avocado toast, and they'll use that line of argument to distract from discussions about how the libertarian dream of global free trade took a lot of good jobs away, or other systems like that that impact an economy. Oh, and content warning, by the way, this next section is about minstrel media. So if by chance the racist depictions of black people that come from the early 20th century cause you disturbance, go ahead and skip to this time code. So with that general understanding of how people in power use this rhetoric, let's turn it on over to Video Essay Piley. Thanks, Reaction Room Piley. For anyone who's come across images of minstrelsy in their education, or maybe you just had a racist grandpa who really loved minstrel media for some reason, the reason he was racist, then you'll be all too familiar with the many ways minstrel media tries to explain away social dynamics. Ever think Jim Crow's a little messed up? Oh, don't worry your pretty little head. You see, these black characters actually like the arrangement. They appreciate the hospitality and take kindly to their bosses. But a less commonly discussed aspect of minstrel media was the presence of gambling. You see, one need only look at photos of how run down the red line enforced black neighborhoods of the late 19th and early 20th centuries were to see that their economic situation was, let's say, poor. And it's not for lack of work ethic or intelligence. Places like the Greenwood neighborhood of Tulsa built up considerable wealth until white supremacists burned it down, but they nonetheless proved that black people have the capacity to be productive and smart if properly supported. A fact that is hopefully self-evident to us now, but was controversial in 1921. But if you were alive in the Jim Crow South, you notice the vast majority of black people were deeply impoverished. And if you were a moral person in the Jim Crow South, you'd start to question why these nice people are in such dire straits. You'd maybe start to ask what economic systems or people in power are holding them back. Which is the exact moment that personal responsibility narratives stepped in to distract the average person from questioning the role Jim Crow policies played in impoverishing black people. Well, one of the results is that a lot of minstrel media portrays black people as having a gambling problem. Cartoons like All This and Wabbit Stew, as well as Angel Puss, show black characters getting hypnotized by the sound of rolling dice, and the cartoon Coal Black and the Seven Dwarves, you can tell from the title this one is hella racist, draws Prince Charming as having dice for his 2 buck teeth, which is a remarkable racist combo. But perhaps the example most important to our conversation, the 1936 short, Sunday Go to Meeting Time, has its main character, a gambling addict, rebuked by the devil himself for his evil choices in a song that's much too catchy for how racist it is. You might see this and assumed it was some weird detail to racism of the time. Like the obsession with skull shapes of old, you might assume this was just some odd quirk with how racists assumed black people acted. But its implications are far more sinister than that. By showing a working class black person gamble their money away, you're creating a narrative in which the poverty of said black character can really only be attributed to his individual choices. It's not his boss's fault for paying him less than his white coworkers, and it's not a politician's fault for allowing neighborhood segregation so that his property is worth pennies on the dollar. No, it's actually just his gambling problem that's to blame. And when this narrative becomes a stereotype, your viewer might walk away from the movie subconsciously blaming the black guy for his poverty. And in that moment, the personal responsibility narratives fed to us from the powerful take away the average person's tools to critique the systemic racism of the Jim Crow South, and leave, in place of said critical tools, nothing but shaming the individuals involved, to make poverty the fault of individual black people instead of the systems they live under. And that, folks, is the natural and desired conclusion of applying the lens of personal responsibility and American individualism to the poverty of the Jim Crow South. I'm sure the practice of blaming black people for their economic woes ends in the civil rights era. I won't investigate that topic any further, but I have faith we're past that as a society. Anyways, let's turn it back over to Editing Room Piley. Now, as disturbing as that particular example is, I hope it gives you a good understanding of sort of the direction of the book, of what I mean when I talk about individual critiques to distract from systemic critiques. And like I said, each chapter is going to bounce around between a variety of unrelated topics, but the overall goal is to build up to what I think is the worst and most dangerous example of this form of individual critique, and that's the presence of Rona eugenics. I've seen a frightening number of conversations about the Rona follow the path of one person saying, we shouldn't be so worried, the only people dying are the immunocompromised. And then when you pause and ask, well, shouldn't we be doing something to, help the immunocompromised? An argument I see far too often to make me comfortable with the state of things is people will then go, oh, well, they made decisions to lead to their immunocompromisation. They chose this for themselves, so, And the fact that for so many Americans, the argument that they chose this justifies leaving such a large segment of the American populace behind just because they made bad choices is just one of the, scariest lines of argument I've seen in years, or at least the scariest line of argument I've seen so closely guide public policy. So yeah, I'm nowhere near done with the book. I'm barely 3 chapters in at this point. But that's the eventual narrative trajectory of the book. But a lot of questions I've been getting so far are about sort of the rollout of this novel. As far as the release goes, obviously in a dream world, I get some sort of book deal, and if I'm lucky, I'll get to choose a publisher that's not too unsustainable or not too, problematic. Is that the word I'm looking for? Whatever. Not a shitheel. I want to find a not shitheel publisher is I guess what I mean. But I'm a nobody with 2,000 subscribers, so I'm sure that's a long shot. More realistically, what will happen is once the book is in a place that I feel comfortable releasing it, I'll send PDFs all over the internet to whoever wants to read my ish. And then something I thought about this morning that I actually think it would be pretty fun, I'll probably also release an audiobook, which will also just kind of be free to whoever wants to read it. And who knows, maybe that'll turn into a collaborative affair if any other people, I meet in these spaces have any interest in lending their voices, or if I can hire any of my acting friends, but that part, we'll see where that goes. So for now, I'll be adding a chapter here or there, or a revision when I find the time for the next few months. And again, you can follow the progress reports of that sort of thing over on Patreon, which will give you access to chapters that may eventually get cut. All in all, I'm making this video to, one, announce the book in general, but to explain that I got a new job recently, like a real world job, not this YouTube shit, and it's had me really busy right off the bat, so it's been kind of hard to find the time to sit and make YouTube videos still, but I can manage more often to find a spare 30 minutes to do a quick revision of a chapter. So it's been a little easier for me to put my time into writing this book than it has been to making videos from the ground up. And this isn't me announcing that I'm done with YouTube. Please don't mistake this for that. I'm just letting you know that this is where some of my time is going these days. So if you want to keep abreast of this journey that I'm on, be sure to join me over on Patreon. Thanks for watching, everybody. Let me know if this topic is interesting to you, if you'd like me to maybe release a chapter here or there as a separate YouTube video. Let me know if there are any examples of this topic I'm talking about that come to mind. And with that, let's turn it on over to the pre-recorded outro. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to toss me a like and subscribe down below. But if you really want to help me out, you can join me over on Patreon. Patrons get access to exclusive behind-the-scenes content, like early versions of every video, and exclusive Patreon-only videos. Plus, if you join the Piley Benton's Biggest Boys tier, you get your name read off at the end of every video. Zoth, Revo Pregame, Emily, Kyle Foley, Jennifer Jones, Caffeine Unicorn, Goblin of the Year, and Cameron Fordo. So if you want to hear your lovely name read off at the end of every video, be sure to join me on this specific tier. Thanks much, everyone, and I'll see you next time.